Today, if you break the law, you get handcuffed, a courtroom, maybe a fine. But thousands of years ago, justice looked nothing like this. Go back far enough and punishment could mean losing everything: your home, your name, even your life. So how did early humans decide what was fair and what wasn't? Let's go back to the very first rules and the very first punishments. Long before laws were written down, ancient people lived in small groups, and every group had unspoken rules: share the food, protect the camp, don't steal from your neighbor. Break one of those rules and the whole group would know. There were no police, no judges, no prisons. Instead, the entire community became the judge. Often it was the eldest or wisest member who decided the punishment. And one of the earliest, most common punishments was shame. Public shaming was powerful. Being humiliated in front of everyone you knew could hurt worse than pain. In tiny communities, your reputation was everything. Lose it, and you might struggle to be trusted again. Sometimes, shame wasn't enough. So ancient people escalated. The next level of punishment? Isolation. Wrongdoers might be kept apart from the group for days. No conversation, no shared meals, just distance. For social creatures like us, that isolation could feel unbearable. And if the offense was serious enough, isolation became permanent. That punishment was banishment, total exile from the group, cast out with no food, no shelter, and no protection. In the ancient world, surviving alone was nearly impossible. No group meant no defense against predators, hunger, or the elements. For early humans, banishment was often a death sentence in disguise, which is exactly why it was reserved for the worst offenses. But not every rule breaking was about theft or shame. Sometimes it was about violence, one person harming another. And ancient communities needed a way to settle that too, without the whole group falling apart. This is where one of humanity's oldest ideas of justice was born: balance. If you caused harm, you had to make it right. This could mean giving up your own food, tools, or belongings to the person you wronged. It wasn't about revenge. It was about restoring what was lost. Many ancient societies believed punishment should fix the wrong, not just cause more pain. But that idea didn't last for every crime. Some offenses called for something far more physical. As communities grew larger, so did their punishments. One of the oldest physical punishments: being bound and put on display, tied up in the open for everyone in the camp to see. It combined punishment with a warning: break the rules and this could be you. Some were left there for hours, others for days, hungry, tired, and humiliated but alive. For many ancient people, that combination was punishment enough. But as human settlements grew bigger, rules had to grow with them. More people meant more disagreements. More disagreements meant more need for order. So instead of the whole tribe deciding punishment, some communities chose a council, a small group of respected people who would listen to both sides. The accuser would speak first, explaining what happened. Then the accused would get a chance to explain themselves. This was one of the earliest forms of something we still use today: a trial. Except back then, there was no lawyer, no jury of strangers, just people who knew you, deciding your fate. And sometimes, the verdict wasn't decided by people at all. In some ancient cultures, they let fate decide. This was known as trial by ordeal. The accused might have to complete a dangerous or painful task: hold a heated object, walk across hot coals, reach into freezing water. The belief was simple: if you were innocent, a higher power would protect you. If you were guilty, you'd suffer the consequences. It sounds harsh today, but for ancient people without science, it felt like real justice. As time went on, punishments started getting even more specific, because ancient societies weren't just tribes anymore. They were becoming towns, cities, kingdoms, and with bigger societies came something new: written rules. For the first time in history, punishments weren't just decided in the moment. They were carved into stone for everyone to see ahead of time. Steal something and the punishment was already written down before you even did it. No more guessing. No more relying only on an elder's mood that day. This was one of the biggest shifts in the history of justice. And many of these early laws followed one core idea: the punishment should match the crime. You may have heard the phrase "an eye for an eye." If you harmed someone, the harm done to you would be equal. It sounds brutal by today's standards, but at the time, it was actually meant to limit violence. Before these laws, people often took revenge far worse than the original crime. One insult could spiral into an entire family feud. Written laws tried to stop that spiral before it started. By setting a clear limit, ancient societies hoped to keep the peace. But not every punishment was about matching harm for harm. Some ancient societies used forced labor as punishment instead. Instead of exile or physical punishment, you'd work off your crime, building walls, digging canals, carrying supplies for as long as the punishment required. It was was exhausting, but it gave the community something useful in return. Your punishment quite literally became part of the town. Of course, not every crime called for hard labor. For smaller offenses, many ancient cultures used fines instead. Pay back what you took, plus a little extra, and the matter was settled. It was faster, simpler, and didn't remove anyone from the community. Fines became one of the most common punishments in the ancient world, but for the most serious crimes, ancient justice could turn far darker. Crimes like murder, betrayal, or turning against your own community. These crimes threatened the very safety of everyone around them, and ancient societies believed the punishment had to reflect that danger. For the worst offenses, the punishment was execution. It was the ultimate consequence, reserved only for the gravest crime. Ancient people didn't take this decision lightly. It usually required agreement from multiple elders or leaders, because taking a life was seen as something only the whole community could decide together. These moments were rare and meant to be remembered as a warning. Now here's something interesting. Punishment wasn't the same everywhere. Different environments meant different rules and different consequences. In dry regions, stealing water could be treated as seriously as stealing food, because in a place where water was scarce, that crime could threaten everyone's survival. In fertile river valleys, punishments for small theft were sometimes lighter, because there was more to go around and less desperation driving the crime. Punishment, it turns out, was shaped by survival as much as morality. In colder, harsher climates, banishment was often the harshest sentence of all. Being sent out into freezing conditions alone left almost no chance of survival. In warmer regions, exile was still dangerous but slightly more survivable. So the same punishment could mean something completely different depending on where you lived. As laws became more common, something else appeared: two ranks of punishment. Ancient societies began separating small offenses from major ones. A minor offense might only earn a warning or a small fine, but repeat offenders faced harsher consequences each time. Ancient communities kept track of who broke the rules and how often. Get caught enough times, and even a small crime could lead to exile. This idea that punishment should scale with the crime is something we still use today. Ancient justice systems were rough, sometimes brutal, but they were building the foundation. Trials, evidence, witnesses, punishments that fit the crime. All of it traces back to these first attempts at fairness, thousands of years ago. The tools changed, the idea didn't. People have always needed a way to answer one question: what happens when someone breaks the rules? Before we wrap up, a few more things are worth knowing about ancient justice. Some communities settled serious disputes through trial by combat. Whoever won wasn't just seen as stronger, they were seen as right. It settled the argument instantly without dragging the whole group into it. Harsh but effective at stopping a conflict from spreading further. Along the coast, ancient communities built their rules around the sea. Stealing another family's catch could mean their children went hungry that night, so the punishment often meant losing access to the boats and the sea for a set time. High in the mountains, where food had to last through long winters, hoarding more than your share was treated just as seriously. Ancient communities also had to ask a harder question: was the harm intentional or an accident? An accident usually meant a lighter punishment helped repair the damage and move on. But if it was deliberate, the punishment climbed sharply. Even without courts or lawyers, ancient people understood that intent mattered, and punishment wasn't always permanent either. Some who served their punishment, paid their debt, or proved themselves changed were welcomed back into the group. Because in the end, most ancient justice wasn't about revenge, it was about keeping the community whole. Shame, exile, fines, trials, even execution, every method was really just one long experiment. An experiment in how to live together without tearing each other apart. Shame, isolation, exile, fines, trials, every method tried to answer the same question. And in every case, the goal was the same: protect the group and keep the peace. Because without some form of justice, no community could survive for long. Rules held people together. Punishment made sure those rules actually meant something. It wasn't always fair by our standards, but it was humanity's first attempt at justice. And in a strange way, every courtroom today still carries a piece of that ancient fire circle. The setting changed. The question never did. So next time you think about rules and consequences, remember, this idea is older than writing itself, older than cities, older than king, as old as humans living together at all. A story that started around one small fire and never really ended. And that's the story of how ancient people punished those who broke the rules. If you enjoyed this journey through ancient justice, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more stories from the ancient world you won't find anywhere else. If you're curious what else ancient humans got up to, there's plenty more waiting for you. Every rule, every punishment, every fire circle led to the world we live in now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.